So today we're going to talk about doing business and the environment and our responsibility for the world around us. Now, a lot of people overlook this topic, but I think caring for the environment is a big part of business and is very beneficial for the business to care about the environment. So we'll talk about that now. Okay. So first, what are resources? So resources are inputs used to create finished goods. So these are the things you need to create the product that you want. Okay, so resources are the inputs that are needed for you to be able to come up with your final product or to run your business. Okay, and nature provides us with the majority of raw materials used to create goods. Okay, in some way, one way or another, we're able to trace back how that material is connected to nature. Okay, so for example, if you're talking about like a computer, a lot of these things may seem like they're made in factories, but for example, the circuit board takes in metals that are mined in mines. Okay, the plastic is made from different materials that are also from nature. Okay, the metals are also from nature. So in one way or another, the raw materials of the products that we need or that we sell come from nature. Now, when we talk about natural resources or resources we get from nature, there are two types. So the first one is renewable. So renewable resources are quickly replenished and readily available. So think of your solar energy, wind energy, okay, water, okay, hydrophonic energy. Okay. So these are the things that are replenished and readily available. So over time, they're quickly able to replenish themselves, and it doesn't take a long period of turnover before you're able to get them. Non-renewable, the second type of natural resources, can get depleted and are usually not as sustainable in the short term. So for example, fossil fuels. Fossil fuels take years and years and hundreds of years for you to be able to make them, and it takes a long process for them to be made. So in the short term, they're not really sustainable. Okay, it takes a long period for nature to be able to make them. That's why we're trying to shift away from non-renewable energy sources to more renewable ones, because over time we're not able to replenish this as quick as renewable energy. Okay, resources in the environment. Resources are found in our environment. Okay, so everything that we need is usually found in their most basic form in our environment, and we're able to transform this to the resources that we use for our final products. Okay, and it involves the world's method of conservation and renewal. So there has to be the balance of nature. Okay, we cannot keep using things from nature without it catching up to renew itself. Okay, and that is a problem now, because the balance now is that we're taking more than what nature can replenish. Okay, because of modernization technology, we're using up more than what nature can naturally provide, and that balance is thrown off. Conservation is thrown off. Okay, we're not able to renew as fast as what we're using. That is already, and I'm sure a lot of people know that is a big problem. We're exploiting nature, and that can lead to dangerous consequences. Okay, so for example, a common example is when we overcut trees, it leads to landslides. Okay, um, prices rising. Okay, as consumers, when we overuse natural resources, it leads to dangerous consequences in economics and even environmental consequences. And mismanagement of this environment can lead to a shortage of depletion of needed inputs. Okay, so if we're consuming more than what nature can provide, at some point we will overtake, or we will use up the natural resources that nature can provide. And this can lead to a depletion or shortage that can cause problems in the supply chain or on how products are made. And it can also cause different problems for different stakeholders. Okay, so when we talk about business and the environment, we have to talk about first sustainability. So for the ability for a process to consistently maintain the cycle of production, okay, we have to be able to ensure that nature is able to sustain itself and maintain its natural cycle of production. Okay. An example is chicken. We're you consuming more chicken than what nature provides. That's why we turn to medicine or vaccines to be able to keep up with the demands. Okay. Because if we deplete our resources, our businesses will not be sustainable. Take for example chicken. If we deplete chicken to the point where we're not able to provide anymore, then a lot of businesses, a lot of restaurants will close. Okay, for example, KFC, Max, um, Bonchon, these businesses will lose their main resource. Okay, and that can turn into a business failure. Okay, that's why we need to be able to practice sustainability with our businesses. And a lot of businesses now are actually pushing to use more sustainable resources to be able to make up for what we're using in nature. Okay. Environmental mismanagement can lead to renewable resources becoming non-renewable. So, for example, water. Okay, if we mismanage um, waste, we can turn a perfectly healthy lake or a perfectly healthy river into something unusable, uninhabitable, and a wasted opportunity. Okay? So, the cost of doing business efficiency can make a company use strategies that deplete resources conflicting with sustainability. Okay, so for example, let's take for example Pasig River. Pasig River could become a very good source of renewable energy, water, um, a place where you can use for transport. So the ships that can go through or ports that can go through, ideally go through Pasig River. But because of mismanagement, where a lot of people dump their trash into Pasig River, now it's more efficient. Yes, in the short term, it was more efficient for them to just dump it there instead of creating a new system for their trash or their waste. But in the long run, because of how ruined Pasig River is, even until now, we're not able to see how we can maximize the use of a very big source of renewable energy. So that's a prime example of how we can turn something renewable into something non-renewable because of environmental mismanagement. And businesses will fail if it does not exercise effective and responsible management of resources. Again, inputs are limited. Our inputs can be depleted. There is no business that can get an unlimited input. It needs to be able to exercise effective and responsible management to ensure that its resources are healthy and are sustainable. Okay? So the social side to resource management or how a company manages resources is overusing resources then leaves less for future generations. Okay, we're not the only ones living on this earth, and we're not gonna be the only ones living for a very long time. Okay, after this, once we all pass away, there are generations after us that will need to make use of the resources. Okay, right now we may not see the immediate effects of what this means, but it will have effect later on. Okay, so a lot of it, for example, a lot of the crises in the past may not necessarily affect that generation, okay? But it does affect future generations as well. So, for example, before over mining, over cutting of trees, it did not necessarily affect the generation that was in the early 90s, early 2000s. But now we're feeling the effects of things like global warming, okay? River pollution, water pollution, shortages, okay? Unpredictable weather. These are side effects that we are suffering now because of past actions. Okay. So it can build up from something that we may not see happening now into something that can happen or affect the future generations. Okay, so we need to show responsibility for Earth and its future inhabitants. Now, the environment side to resource management, pollution. This is the excessive production of waste material without an effective method of disposal. It's almost impossible to completely go green. You will always, in some sort of way, create a carbon footprint or leave pollution behind. Now, the only way for businesses to be able to overcome this is really to have an effective method of disposal. Recycle what you can recycle, and those that you can, you find a way to dispose them without affecting other natural resources. An example is Boracay. They did not have an effective method of disposal, and that caused them um, to lose business, negatively affected them. But when they really put their all into it, or when they were given time to rehabilitate, they were able to do it. They were able to make an effective way of method disposal. It's really just the business um, wanting to have an effective method of disposal. Okay, and businesses can be efficient at production but inefficient at waste management. The hotels, the resorts dumping trash into Boracay's beaches were not really inefficient at what they were doing. It's just that they were good at their business, but they really didn't want to care about the waste disposal part. Okay. Next, exploitation. The company can focus on short-term benefit and disregard the long-term problems caused by their strategies. Okay, again, talking about Boracay. Short-term benefit, cheaper, easier, and probably more efficient to just dump your trash into the ocean. Okay, really quickly, really easy. Okay, but then the long-term problems that it can cause is if it ruins the beach. Okay, it can kill the ocean animals. It can change the way. It can affect tourists. It can affect the health of different communities, and there will always be environmental effects to business strategies. You will always affect the environment in some way, since all businesses produce waste. May it be smog, may it be water waste, may it be extra materials that you can't sell that are dumped or burning of extra products. There will always be environmental effects that require responsible business strategies. So, what do you do with your extra stock? Do you burn them? What do you do about the smoke or the waste that you're producing? These are the things that the business has to think about. And when we talk about environmental care, okay, we need to care for the environment. All our resources come from nature, and it provides a home for us as people, and especially a home for our businesses. Okay, the ecosystem helps provide us with the necessary inputs to survive, not just as people, but also our businesses. We take everything from the ecosystem, and we have to help care for that ecosystem. Okay, things like global warming, things like waste disposal, these are things that can heavily impact a business if we're not done correctly. Now, effects of the environment on the business. Factors of business will be affected by environmental problems. Okay? One, for example, global warming. Okay? So, society's problems, waste management issues that affect society. For example, society's problems are problems of the business. Okay? And people live in the same world. Okay? So, I'll give you an example. Um, let's say, for example, we don't fix the waste disposal problem in Boracay. We just let them keep dumping waste into the ocean. At some point, the beaches will become ruined. It will Tourists will stop going, and businesses will soon fail once you have no tourists coming into Boracay, since a lot of resorts rely on foreign tourists coming from them. Okay, so people and living creatures are stakeholders. The environment is a stakeholder to the business, and we have to care for it in one way or another, especially when we're creating waste. Okay. So, environmental problems simple as global warming, water shortage, water pollution, these are the things that can monumentally impact a business in the long run. Okay. For example, we have dystopian movies that talk about the lack of water, pollution at another level. Okay. These are things that can affect a business and that can cause them to fail. Now, when we talk about ecological ethics, what ecological ethics tells us is that we must care for our resources even if they are not human. Okay, we always put an emphasis here on human dignity, but the environment is just as important as humans. Okay, we need to care for them. We need to be able to avoid doing harm, okay, to any stakeholder to our business, including our environment. Okay. Right now we only have one Earth, and we have no other source of resources. Okay, maybe in the future that will change, but right now we have only one source of resources, and we're all sharing the resources that we have. There's no monopoly on certain resources right now. Okay, now what are the duties of the firm to the environment? Okay, first one is the cost of pollution are internalized. The producer or the ones who make the waste have to in turn absorb all related expenses to eliminate pollution. Okay, so it's the duty of the business to handle the pollution that it will make. So it's proper waste disposal, probably paying for recycling, things like that. Okay, and it costs money, yes, but it will also benefit the company in the long run. So the waste of the company can also hinder their own operations. Okay, let's use Boracay as an example. When the government shut down Boracay, it affected the businesses there heavily because they couldn't operate for almost half a year. Okay, and companies can do cleanups and recycling if they really wanted to. Okay, but preventive measure is probably still the best. That if they already have a waste disposal management system in place, then they could avoid recycling and doing cleanups. Okay, so one, it's costly. It could be costly in the short term, but in the long term, it benefits the business as a whole to pay for the cost of pollution. Next is the duty to justice. It's the responsibility, okay, for the business to take care of Earth for the next generation. Because I'm sure any business owner wants their business to be sustainable in the long run. And for it to be sustainable, you have to be able to ensure that it can keep getting resources from nature, okay? And it has to be a sustainable business. And a sustainable business needs to be able to sustain its resources. So there's a need for businesses to pursue strategies linked to sustainability through environmental rights. So it has to uphold, okay, environmental rights, and as much as possible, do as less damage to the community and to the environment as possible. Okay. Another one is the firm needs to consider the costs and benefits of their strategy. So what are the benefits compared to the cost? Okay, is there is a need for balance between efficiency, so you're not trying to let go of being an efficient business, what will make the most profit, as we've talked about before. We have to also profit from our businesses, but at the same time, how can we make it more sustainable in terms of the resources that we're getting? Okay, and social auditing is essential to take note of the needs of society in the world. So, what is it costing the business and how is it affecting different societies, the environment, and audit it or compare it to what the benefits we're getting at. And if there are different strategies we can employ to make sure we have a better cost benefit. So for now, that's it. These are the different duties of the firm to the environment, and hopefully, we're able to see the value of um, doing business in the environment and how the environment is really an important aspect of doing business.